Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Today we close debate on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act amendments of 2008.
The government is given the ability, potentially, to suck up all bulk communications, all international calls, all emails, all text messages that any American might make to their daughter who's a junior year abroad, a daughter or a son who's a soldier in Iraq, a reporter, a business associate. This is a frightening intrusion, and it has no court supervision whatsoever, really.
All the years I was growing up in Vermont, we were told nobody's above the law. All my time in law school, we were told nobody is above the law. We take an oath of office when we're sworn into this body. There's only 100 of us to represent 300 million Americans, but we're also told no one's above the law. We're about to vote on a bill that says, well, the president and those people around him are above it.
No individual, no president is above the law. This president, perhaps more than any other in history, has abrogated the Constitution of the United States. The time is now to stand up and say, no more. Let us defeat this legislation. Let us assure the American people that, in fact, we are a nation of laws, not individuals.
Does America stand for the rule of law or for the rule of men? That question never goes away. It's been the same question asked for more than 2 centuries.
It was the Bush administration that went beyond the law. It was the Bush administration that went beyond the Constitution. And I think it's important for us to balance the needs of our community to get information to protect us, but also protect the civil liberties with the proper checks and balances in our system.
70 members of the Senate have not been briefed on the program. And I've heard from House leadership that most of the members of the House have not been briefed on the program. And there's been no official determination. The language is picked up from the allegations of the complaint as to what is alleged. And the question is, how can the Congress intelligently decide, maybe that's too high a standard, but how can the Congress, especially the world's greatest deliberative body, the United States Senate, how can the decision be made on electronic surveillance granting retroactive immunity when we don't know what we're granting retroactive immunity to?
The members of the Senate do not know what it is we are granting immunity for.
The notion that 70 senators would not be briefed on something that we're voting on, and the notion that the creation of the Intelligence Committee, which of course I'm a member of and which I support, is a justification for having 70 senators not knowing what they're voting on, is a very bizarre interpretation of why the Intelligence Committee was created. It was not created as a replacement for the United States Senate when it comes to voting on the fundamental laws and rights of the American people.
We're telling Americans, law-abiding, honest, good, hard-working Americans, that we're closing the courthouse door in your face because we have to protect the president and those around him who may have done something illegal.
This bulk collection of innocent Americans' private communication is unacceptable and contrary to Americans' values and the fundamentals of our constitutional protection.
The president broke the law and should be held accountable.
We're talking about spying on U.S. citizens.
The telecom industry, based on some documents, possibly a letter or others, decided that it was appropriate for them to gather up virtually all of the conversations, email, telephone conversations and the like of millions and millions of Americans over a period of 5 or 6 years in the wake of 9/11. As I've said repeatedly, had this gone on for months or years or a year or so, I wouldn't have raised any objection given the emotion surrounding the attack on our country. But this program, I suggest, would still be ongoing had it not been for a whistleblower that helped identify the program.
And the administration violated FISA by conducting warrantless surveillance for more than 5 years. And then they got caught.
Mr. President, we hear people argue that the telecom companies should not be penalized for allegedly taking part in this illegal program. What you don't hear, though, is that current law already provides immunity from lawsuits for companies that cooperate with the government's request for assistance.
And in that opinion, Chief Judge Walker finds the terrorist surveillance program unconstitutional. Says flatly that the language of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978 means what it says on the exclusive remedy for warrants, and that the President exceeded his Article 2 powers as Commander-in-Chief.
There are no consequences for illegal behavior by the government of the United States. Now, that's just wrong.
Congress ought to step aside and let the courts fulfill their constitutional function.
Anyone in the chamber wish to change their vote or who hasn't voted? By a vote of 69 ayes and 28 nays, the bill is passed.
When Democrats stood up to the president on FISA earlier this year, I think it was widely understood that they looked tough. Republicans tried sort of half-heartedly to go after them for that stance, but it didn't really work. And because of that, I honestly do not understand the politics at work today. Why did a Democratic-led Congress let this pass?
Well, this is a sad moment. It really is a black mark, not only on the Democrats, but on the Congress and really the history of our country. And the same thing, Rachel, happened with regard to the Patriot Act. When we tried to fix it after it had been passed in a flawed way, there was this period of strength where Democrats held firm, and then they collapsed. And the same thing happened again here. This administration, despite its weakness, somehow is able to raise the specter of being, as they say, soft on terrorism. And unfortunately, Democrats who can be so strong on domestic issues somehow collapse. And that's exactly what happened. This is a terrible piece of legislation. It's one of the greatest assaults on the Constitution, I think, in the history of our country. We are going to have to fix it, but it is a dark hour for the Constitution. Having a Democratic president, in particular Barack Obama, should allow us to greatly change this mistake.